The old shaman looked directly into my eyes and said something that shattered everything I thought I knew about spiritual growth. We were sitting around a dying fire in the Amazon rainforest, and I had just finished telling him about my years of meditation, my spiritual practices, my search for enlightenment. I expected him to nod approvingly, to recognize a kindred spirit on the path. Instead, he smiled in a way that made my stomach drop and spoke words that would haunt me for years to come. He said that Western people come to him broken not because they lack spiritual knowledge, but because they have been taught to worship only half of themselves while trying to murder the other half. He pointed to the dying embers and explained that just as a fire needs both oxygen and fuel to burn, just as the forest needs both growth and decay to thrive, human consciousness needs both light and shadow to become truly alive. Then he asked me a question that stopped my breath completely. When was the last time you honored the part of yourself that you are most ashamed of? That question landed in my chest like a stone thrown into still water, creating ripples that reached every corner of my being. Because in that instant I realized what I had been doing for years without even knowing it. I had been practicing what he called spiritual murder, systematically attempting to eliminate every aspect of myself that did not fit my carefully constructed image of who an awakened person should be. I had been meditating not to understand my anger, but to make it disappear. I had been practicing compassion not to embrace my full humanity, but to bypass the parts of myself that felt too raw, too real, too frighteningly human. I had been seeking enlightenment not as a deepening into truth, but as an escape from it. This is precisely what Mircea Eliade, the great Romanian scholar of religions, spent his entire life trying to teach the modern world. After studying hundreds of spiritual traditions across cultures and centuries, he discovered something that would completely revolutionize how we understand the journey toward awakening. He found that every authentic spiritual path in human history had one thing in common. They all demanded not the elimination of darkness, but the sacred integration of it. From the descent of Inanna into the underworld in ancient Mesopotamia, to the dark night of the soul in Christian mysticism, from the vision quests of Native American traditions to the terrifying initiations of shamanic cultures, every real spiritual transformation required what he called a conscious death and rebirth, a willingness to journey into the very depths of what we most fear about ourselves and emerge transformed. But somewhere along the way, modern spirituality lost this ancient wisdom. We became seduced by what Eliade called the illusion of the eternal light, the belief that awakening means transcending our humanity rather than fully embodying it. We started treating our shadows not as sacred teachers but as enemies to be conquered. We began believing that spiritual growth meant becoming someone other than who we are, rather than becoming more deeply and authentically who we have always been, including the parts we would rather not acknowledge. The shaman in the Amazon understood something that took me years to fully grasp. He knew that the very aspects of ourselves we try hardest to eliminate are often the doorways to our greatest power and deepest wisdom. The anger we suppress may contain the fierce energy needed to protect what we love. The sadness we avoid may hold the capacity for profound compassion. The fear we run from may be the guardian of our most precious vulnerabilities. The shame we carry may be the compost from which our greatest gifts grow. But we will never discover these hidden treasures if we remain committed to spiritual warfare against ourselves. Eliade called this the difference between profane and sacred time, but not in the way most people understand these concepts. Profane time is linear, always trying to get somewhere else, always seeking to become someone other than who we are right now. It is the time of spiritual ambition, of constantly working to improve ourselves, to transcend our limitations, to evolve beyond our current state. Sacred time, on the other hand, is circular, cyclical, always returning us to the eternal now, always inviting us deeper into what already is. Sacred time does not seek to eliminate darkness, but to dance with it, to find the hidden light within it, to discover that what we thought was our greatest weakness may actually be our most profound strength. When you begin to understand this distinction, everything changes. You stop trying to meditate your way out of difficult emotions and start meditating your way into them. You stop using spiritual practices as escape routes from your humanity and start using them as diving boards into its deepest waters. You stop seeking to become someone else and start becoming more authentically yourself, including the parts you have spent years trying to disown. This is what Eliade meant when he wrote about the axis mundi, the sacred center that connects heaven and earth. He was not just talking about physical sacred sites, but about the psychological and spiritual center within each of us, where our highest aspirations meet our deepest shadows. The axis mundi is not found by ascending into the light while leaving the darkness behind. It is found by descending so deeply into our own underworld that we discover the light that has been hiding there all along. Think about the most profound spiritual experiences described throughout history. The Buddha did not achieve enlightenment by avoiding temptation, but by sitting with it so completely that he could see through its illusions. Jesus did not demonstrate his spiritual mastery by staying safely in the temple, but by descending into hell itself to retrieve the lost souls imprisoned there. The great mystics did not find God by ascending into blissful states, but by descending so deeply into their own darkness that they discovered the divine light that illuminates even the most terrible shadows. But we live in a culture that has forgotten this ancient wisdom. We have been sold a spirituality of comfort rather than transformation, a spirituality that promises to make us feel better rather than become more real. We seek teachers who will confirm our existing beliefs rather than shatter them. We choose practices that soothe our anxiety rather than reveal its deeper message. We want awakening to be a pleasant journey of gradually becoming more peaceful, more loving, more wise, without ever having to face the parts of ourselves that feel anything but peaceful, loving, or wise. You know what touches me most when I read your messages? It is realizing that we are not alone in this search. If you are listening to me now and feel that emptiness, that sensation that something important is missing in your life, I want you to know that I understand exactly what you are going through. There were moments when I also felt completely disconnected from the sacred, lost in the midst of a routine that seemed to suck all the magic out of existence. That is why I want to ask you a very direct question. What was the last moment you felt there was something greater than yourself present in your life? It could have been contemplating a sunset, listening to music, or simply in an instant of silence. If you feel comfortable, write in the comments, "I miss the sacred in my daily life," and briefly tell when that last moment was. Your story might be exactly what someone needs to read today to feel less alone in this journey. And I promise I will read each comment with the care it deserves. The problem is not that we are broken or that we lack spiritual capacity. The problem is that we have been taught to approach awakening as if it were a surgical procedure designed to remove the parts of ourselves we find unacceptable. We have been conditioned to believe that spiritual growth means becoming less human rather than more human, transcending our nature rather than fully inhabiting it, escaping from reality rather than diving more deeply into it. Eliade understood that this approach is not just ineffective but actually counterproductive. When we try to eliminate aspects of ourselves through spiritual practice, we do not make them disappear. We simply drive them underground where they become more powerful and more destructive. The anger we refuse to feel becomes rage that explodes at inappropriate moments. The sadness we will not allow becomes depression that clouds our entire experience. The fear we constantly avoid becomes anxiety that controls our every decision. The shadow we refuse to acknowledge becomes a tyrant that rules our life from the unconscious depths. But when we begin to approach our shadows with the same curiosity and compassion we bring to meditation, when we start to treat our difficult emotions as sacred messengers rather than unwelcome intruders, when we learn to descend consciously into our own underworld rather than being dragged there against our will, everything begins to shift. We discover that our darkness is not the opposite of our light, but the rich soil from which it grows. We find that our wounds are not obstacles to our healing, but the very places where healing wants to happen. We realize that our shadows are not enemies of our awakening, but the guardians of our most authentic power. This is what the ancient traditions knew, and what modern spirituality has largely forgotten. Transformation does not happen through elimination, but through integration. Awakening does not come through transcendence, but through embodiment. Enlightenment is not about becoming someone other than who you are, but about becoming so completely who you are that the very distinction between light and dark begins to dissolve. Eliade called this the myth of eternal return, but he was not talking about reincarnation or past lives. He was describing the cyclical nature of all genuine transformation, the way we must repeatedly return to the same issues, the same patterns, the same shadows, but each time at a deeper level, with greater understanding, with more capacity to hold the paradoxes and complexities of human existence. When you truly understand this, you stop being frustrated by the fact that the same issues keep coming up in your life. Instead, you begin to see each return as an opportunity to go deeper, to understand more, to integrate what was previously unconscious. You stop treating your spiritual path as a linear progression towards some imagined finish line and start experiencing it as a spiral dance that brings you home to yourself again and again, each time more completely. The ancient initiations understood this perfectly. They did not promise candidates that they would emerge from the ordeal as perfected beings, who never again would struggle with difficult emotions or challenging circumstances. Instead, they promised that candidates would emerge with a fundamentally different relationship to their struggles, a relationship that transformed suffering from something that happens to you into something that happens through you and for you. This is the secret that the shaman in the Amazon was trying to share with me, and it is the same secret that Eliade spent his life documenting in the religious traditions of humanity. The goal of spiritual practice is not to eliminate your humanity, but to divinize it, not to transcend your nature, but to discover the sacred dimensions hidden within it, not to escape from the world, but to find the eternal within the temporal, the infinite within the finite, the divine within the very human experience you have been trying so hard to transcend. When you begin to practice this way, everything becomes medicine. Your anger becomes a fierce protector of your boundaries. Your sadness becomes a deep well of compassion. Your fear becomes a wise counselor that helps you navigate uncertainty. Your shame becomes the compost that fertilizes your growth. Even your confusion becomes a sacred emptiness pregnant with new possibilities. But this transformation requires something that our culture does not teach, and that most spiritual traditions have forgotten: the courage to turn toward what you have been running from, the willingness to befriend what you have been fighting, the capacity to love what you have been hating about yourself. It requires what Eliade called sacred time, the ability to step out of the linear progression of always trying to get somewhere else, and into the eternal now where transformation actually happens. If you have made it this far, it is because something inside you recognizes that there is a different path, a deeper way to understand your own spiritual journey. I know what it is like to feel lost amid so much noise of the modern world, seeking answers that always seem to slip through your fingers. That is why I created this space, this refuge where we can explore together the ancient wisdom that still pulses alive in our hearts. When you subscribe to this channel, you are not just clicking a button, you are joining a community of people who, like you, feel that life has deeper layers waiting to be discovered. Here you will find not just knowledge, but genuine embrace for your thirst for meaning. Subscribe now and be part of this journey of rediscovering the sacred in everyday life. Your soul deserves this gift. This is not a path for the faint of heart, but it is the only path that leads to genuine freedom. It is the path that every authentic spiritual tradition has pointed toward, the path that Eliade spent his life documenting, the path that the shamans and mystics and sages have walked throughout human history. It is the path of conscious descent into your own depths, not to be destroyed by what you find there, but to be reborn from it, transformed by it, made whole by it. But let me be specific about what this actually looks like in practice, because Eliade was not just a theoretical scholar, but someone who understood the lived experience of transformation. When he studied the initiation rites of different cultures, he noticed a consistent pattern that he called the structure of sacred experience. First, there was always a separation from ordinary life, a stepping out of the familiar world of daily routines and social roles. Then came the liminal period, the time of being between worlds, neither who you were before nor who you would become, suspended in a space of uncertainty and possibility. Finally, there was the reintegration, the return to ordinary life, but with a fundamentally transformed understanding of what ordinary actually means. This pattern is not just found in ancient initiation ceremonies. It is the hidden structure of every genuine moment of growth and awakening in your own life. Think about the last time you experienced real transformation, not just a temporary mood change or a new insight, but a fundamental shift in how you see yourself in the world. I guarantee that it followed this same pattern. Something in your familiar world stopped working. You found yourself in a place of confusion and uncertainty, where your old ways of thinking and being no longer applied. And then, if you stayed with the discomfort long enough instead of rushing back to what felt safe and known, something new was born in you. The problem is that we have been taught to avoid the middle phase, the liminal period, at all costs. We want the transformation without the transition, the resurrection without the crucifixion, the rebirth without the death. We want to skip straight from who we are to who we want to become without ever passing through the terrifying emptiness of not knowing who we are at all. But this is precisely where the real work happens, in the space between stories, in the gap between identities, in the darkness between one version of yourself and another. Eliade called this the sacred time of the eternal now, but he was not talking about some blissful state of perpetual presence. He was describing the quality of time that opens up when you stop trying to get somewhere else and start being completely where you are, even when where you are feels like nowhere at all. This is the time when transformation actually happens, not in the moments when you feel clear and confident and in control, but in the moments when you feel lost and confused and completely out of your depth. Most people experience this sacred time as a crisis, and they do everything in their power to get through it as quickly as possible. They rush to new relationships to avoid feeling lonely. They throw themselves into work to avoid feeling purposeless. They consume endless entertainment and information to avoid feeling empty. They seek out spiritual teachers and practices that promise to quickly restore their sense of meaning and direction. But what if the crisis is not a problem to be solved, but a sacred invitation to be received? This is what the shaman in the Amazon understood when he asked me about honoring the part of myself I was most ashamed of. He was not being provocative or trying to shock me. He was pointing me toward the place where my real power was hidden, disguised as my greatest weakness, waiting for me to stop running from it and start embracing it as a doorway to deeper truth. Consider what you are most ashamed of about yourself right now. Not the surface-level things that you tell people when you want to appear humble and self-aware, but the deep, secret things that make you feel sick to your stomach when you think about them. The ways you have hurt people you love. The times you have acted from pure selfishness while convincing yourself you were being noble. The moments when your mask slipped and others saw the petty, jealous, frightened person you really are underneath all your spiritual pretensions. What if those moments are not evidence of your spiritual failure but doorways to your spiritual breakthrough? What if the very things you are most ashamed of contain the seeds of your greatest gifts? What if your jealousy, fully felt and honestly acknowledged, transforms into a fierce appreciation for beauty? What if your anger, no longer suppressed but consciously expressed, becomes the energy that protects what you love? What if your fear, met with curiosity instead of resistance, reveals the precious vulnerabilities that make you capable of deep intimacy? This is not about glorifying your shadow or pretending that harmful behaviors are actually helpful. It is about understanding that every shadow contains both a gift and a wound, both a wisdom and a distortion, and that the only way to separate them is through conscious engagement rather than unconscious avoidance. Eliade discovered this pattern in every religious tradition he studied. The Babylonian hero Marduk had to battle the primordial dragon Tiamat, but instead of destroying her completely, he used her body to create the heavens and the earth. The Egyptian god Osiris had to be murdered and dismembered by his brother Set before he could be resurrected as the ruler of the underworld. The Greek hero Perseus had to look directly into the face of Medusa, but he could only do so by seeing her reflection in his shield, by finding a way to meet her gaze indirectly rather than turning away from her entirely. These are not just ancient stories, but timeless maps of psychological and spiritual transformation. They are teaching you that your greatest enemy is also your greatest teacher, that your deepest wound is also your most profound source of wisdom, that the very thing you most want to avoid is precisely what you most need to embrace. But how do you actually do this? How do you turn toward what you have been running from without being destroyed by it? This is where Eliade's understanding of sacred space becomes crucial. Just as ancient temples provided a protected container for encountering divine forces that would be overwhelming in ordinary life, you need to create sacred space within yourself for meeting your shadows safely. This means developing what spiritual traditions call discriminating awareness, the capacity to observe your thoughts and emotions without being completely identified with them. When anger arises, instead of either suppressing it or acting it out unconsciously, you learn to feel it fully while maintaining enough space to also study it, to understand what it is trying to protect, to discover what it needs to feel heard and honored. This is not easy work. It requires a kind of spiritual courage that our culture does not teach, and that most spiritual communities actively discourage. It means being willing to sit with your most uncomfortable feelings until you understand their deeper message. It means developing the capacity to hold paradox, to be both the observer and the observed, to be both the lover and the beloved, to be both human and divine simultaneously. Eliade understood that this capacity develops gradually through practice, through repeatedly choosing to turn toward difficulty instead of away from it, through learning to trust that consciousness itself is vast enough to hold whatever arises within it. He called this the development of religious consciousness, but he was not talking about believing in any particular doctrine or following any specific practice. He was describing the fundamental shift that happens when you realize that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not even your personality, but rather the spacious awareness within which all of these phenomena arise and pass away. When you truly understand this, everything changes. You stop taking your emotions so personally because you realize they are simply weather patterns moving through the sky of your consciousness. You stop being so afraid of difficult experiences because you understand that they cannot actually harm the essential you that witnesses them. You stop trying to control your inner world and start learning to dance with it, to work with its rhythms, to find the hidden intelligence that is always operating beneath the surface chaos. This is what the ancient mystery schools were designed to teach, what the shamanic initiations were meant to reveal, what every authentic spiritual path ultimately points toward. Not the elimination of the human experience, but its complete sanctification. Not transcendence of your nature, but the full embodiment of its divine dimensions. Not escape from the world, but the discovery of the sacred that has been hiding within it all along. But perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Eliade's teaching is his understanding that this transformation is not something that happens once and then is complete. Instead, it is a cyclical process that repeats itself at deeper and deeper levels throughout your entire life. Just when you think you have integrated a particular shadow or learned a particular lesson, life presents you with a new situation that reveals an even deeper layer of the same issue. Most people find this frustrating. They want spiritual growth to be linear, progressive, with each lesson clearly learned and left behind. But Eliade understood that this cyclical nature is not a bug in the system, but its most essential feature. Each time you return to the same issue, you bring more consciousness to it, more capacity to hold its complexity, more skill at finding the hidden gifts within its challenges. Think of it like a spiral staircase. You keep coming back to the same point, but each time you are at a higher level, with a broader perspective, with a deeper understanding of the territory you are navigating. The issues do not disappear, but your relationship to them becomes increasingly transformed, increasingly wise, increasingly compassionate. This understanding can completely change how you relate to your own spiritual journey. Instead of being frustrated when old patterns resurface, you can recognize them as opportunities for even deeper integration. Instead of judging yourself for not being further along, you can appreciate the spiral nature of growth and trust, that each cycle is bringing you home to yourself in a more complete way. The invitation is always here, waiting for you whenever you are ready to stop running from yourself and start running toward yourself, whenever you are ready to stop trying to become someone else and start becoming more deeply who you have always been, whenever you are ready to discover that the very darkness you have been fleeing contains the light you have been seeking. Your shadows are not your enemies. They are your teachers, your allies, your guides back to the wholeness you never actually lost but simply forgot how to see. The sacred is not somewhere else, waiting for you to become worthy of it. The sacred is here, now, hidden in plain sight within the very human experience you have been trying so hard to transcend. Your task is not to eliminate your humanity, but to discover the divinity that has been dwelling within it all along, patiently waiting for you to stop rejecting it and start embracing it with the full passion of your awakening heart. Remember that every master was once a beginner, every expert was once a complete disaster, every awakened being was once exactly where you are right now, standing at the threshold between who they have been and who they are becoming, feeling terrified and exhilarated and completely uncertain about what lies ahead. The only difference is that they said yes to the journey, yes to the unknown, yes to the terrifying and beautiful process of becoming more authentic, more real, more whole. Your time is now. Your darkness is ready to reveal its gifts. Your shadows are waiting to be welcomed home. Share this wisdom with someone who needs to hear it, and remember that every step you take toward your own wholeness makes it easier for others to take theirs. The world needs your authentic light, including the light that is hidden within your carefully guarded darkness.